Commander Rachel Torres never believed in impossible things. After 23 years in the Navy, she had seen enough to know that the ocean kept its secrets well, but she also knew that everything had a logical explanation. Standing on the bridge of the research vessel Deep Explorer that cold Tuesday morning, she was about to discover just how wrong she could be. The sonar operator, a young tech named Billy, had been staring at his screen for the past hour with a confused look on his face. "Ma'am, you need to see this," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "There's something down there that doesn't make any sense." Rachel walked over and looked at the display. 3 miles beneath them, in one of the deepest parts of the Pacific Ocean, the sonar had picked up what looked like a massive ship, but that wasn't the strange part. Ships sank all the time, and the ocean floor was littered with wrecks from centuries of naval battles and storms. What made this different was the readings themselves. The computer was showing metal signatures that didn't match anything in their database. The shape was definitely a warship, long and sleek, with what appeared to be gun turrets and a command tower. But according to the instruments, it was over 800 feet long, making it bigger than most modern aircraft carriers. "Run the scan again," Rachel ordered. "Maybe there's interference from the thermal vents." Billy's fingers danced across the controls, but the results came back exactly the same. "Ma'am, there's something else. The carbon dating sensors are picking up organic material mixed with the metal. And the age reading says this thing has been down there for about 200 years. Rachel frowned. A 200-year-old warship that big? That was impossible. The largest ships of that era were barely half that size. "Get Dr. Peterson up here," she said, "and prepare the deep-sea recovery probe." Dr. James Peterson was the team's marine archaeologist, a man who had spent his entire career studying shipwrecks. When he arrived on the bridge and saw the readings, his face went pale. "This can't be right," he muttered. "No ship from the early 1800s was built to these specifications." "That's what I thought," Rachel replied. "But our instruments don't lie. We're going down to take a look." The next 6 hours were spent preparing the deep-sea submersible. The Nereid was a state-of-the-art vehicle capable of reaching the deepest parts of the ocean, equipped with powerful lights, robotic arms, and enough life support for a crew of 3. Rachel decided to pilot it herself, along with Dr. Peterson and their best underwater photographer, Lisa Changda. As they descended through the dark water, the temperature dropped and the pressure increased. At 2,000 feet, they were in complete darkness except for their lights. At 10,000 feet, they were deeper than most submarines ever went. At 15,000 feet, they reached the ocean floor. "There," Peterson pointed through the porthole. "Dead ahead." Rachel had seen hundreds of shipwrecks in her career, but nothing had prepared her for this sight. The vessel was enormous, stretching out beyond the reach of their lights. But more shocking than its size was its condition. Ships that had been underwater for 200 years should be covered in coral, rust, and marine growth. This one looked almost new. "Take us closer," she whispered Dot as they approached the hull. Lisa began taking pictures. "The metal," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's not corroded at all. It's like it was built yesterday." But Peterson was focused on something else. "Look at the design," he said. "Those gun ports, the shape of the bow, this is definitely from the age of sail, but the size ... it's impossible." Rachel guided the submersible along the length of the ship. It was beautiful in a strange way, with smooth lines and an elegant design that seemed to flow like water. But as they moved toward the stern, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. "Are you seeing this?" she asked the others. The metal hull wasn't just clean, it was moving. Slightly, almost imperceptibly, but definitely moving. It looked like it was breathing. "That's impossible," Peterson said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Metal doesn't breathe." Lisa had her camera focused on the hull. "It's not just moving," she said quietly. "There's a pattern to it. Like a heartbeat." Rachel felt her hands trembling on the controls. In 23 years of naval service, she had never seen anything like this. "We need samples," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Deploy the collection arm." The robotic arm extended from the submersible and scraped along the hull. Instead of the harsh sound of metal on metal, they heard something softer, almost organic. The material that came off wasn't rust or barnacles. It looked like skin. "Get us back to the surface," Peterson said urgently. "We need to analyze this immediately." The trip back up seemed to take forever. None of them spoke much, each lost in their own thoughts about what they had just witnessed. When they finally reached the Deep Explorer, Rachel immediately ordered the crew to prepare for an extended stay. Whatever they had found down there, it was going to change everything. In the ship's laboratory, Dr. Peterson began analyzing the samples under a microscope. What he found defied all scientific explanation. The material wasn't metal at all. It was some kind of organic compound that had properties of both living tissue and manufactured steel. Under high magnification, he could see what looked like cells, but they were arranged in patterns that resembled the molecular structure of metal alloys. "This is impossible," he kept saying. Living metal doesn't exist, but Lisa had made an even more disturbing discovery. While enhancing the photographs she had taken, she noticed something in the ship's windows. Dark shapes that looked almost human were moving inside the vessel. "Rachel," she called. "You need to see this." The commander looked at the enhanced images and felt her world shift. There, clearly visible through the ship's portholes, were figures in what appeared to be 19th century naval uniforms. They seemed to be moving with purpose, as if they were still operating the ship. "Those can't be people," Peterson said. Nothing could survive at that depth for 200 years. But as they watched the images, one of the figures seemed to notice their camera. It moved to the window and pressed what looked like a hand against the glass. For just a moment, Rachel could swear she saw eyes looking back at her through the photograph. That night, as news of the discovery began to spread through military channels, Rachel stood on the deck of her ship and looked out at the dark ocean. Somewhere far below, an impossible ship was waiting with an impossible crew. She knew that by morning, scientists and military officials from around the world would be demanding answers. The problem was, she didn't have any answers. All she had were questions that challenged everything she thought she knew about the world. How could a ship that old be in such perfect condition? How could metal be alive? And most frightening of all, what did those figures inside the ship want? As she watched the waves, Rachel realized that their discovery would change more than just marine archaeology. They had found something that would force humanity to reconsider its understanding of life, death, and what was possible in the vast, mysterious ocean that covered most of their planet. Tomorrow, she would have to make the most important decision of her career. Should they go back down to make contact with whatever was inside that ship? Or should they leave it alone and pretend they had never found it at all? Deep below the surface, the impossible ship continued its slow, steady breathing, waiting for humanity to decide its fate. 3 weeks after the discovery, the impossible ship had been carefully raised from the ocean floor and transported to a secret research facility on a remote island in the Pacific. The operation had taken every piece of heavy lifting equipment the Navy could find. And even then, moving something that large and mysterious had been like trying to relocate a sleeping giant. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the massive hangar, staring up at the vessel that defied everything she thought she knew about science. As the world's leading expert in biomechanical systems, she had been called in when the preliminary tests revealed that the ship wasn't just metal, it was somehow alive. "It's incredible," she whispered to her assistant, Kevin Park, as they walked along the length of the hull. "The cellular structure is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's as if someone took human tissue and taught it to be steel." Kevin nodded, but she could see he was nervous. Everyone on the research team was nervous. How do you study something that might be watching you back? The ship had been placed in a specially constructed hangar that allowed them to monitor it from every angle. Dozens of sensors tracked its vital signs, and yes, it definitely had vital signs. The hull rose and fell in a steady rhythm that could only be described as breathing. Heat sensors showed warm spots that pulsed like a circulatory system. And strangest of all, electrical activity patterns that looked remarkably similar to brain waves. "Dr. Rodriguez," called out Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell Hayes, the military liaison assigned to the project. "We're ready to begin the first communication attempt." Elena felt her heart rate increase. After weeks of studying the ship's biology, they had developed a theory. If the vessel was truly alive, it might be possible to communicate with it using a combination of electrical impulses and biochemical signals. The idea sounded crazy, but then again, everything about this situation was crazy. They had set up a complex array of equipment around the ship's hull. Electromagnetic field generators, chemical dispensers, and sensitive recording devices that could detect even the slightest response. Elena had spent days calibrating the system, trying to find the right frequency and chemical mixture that might trigger a reaction. "Remember," she told the team, "we start small. A simple electrical pulse, basic chemical markers. We don't want to overwhelm it if it really is conscious." She walked over to the control panel and placed her hand on the activation switch. Around the hangar, her team was positioned at monitoring stations, ready to record whatever happened. Elena took a deep breath and pressed the button. The response was immediate and terrifying. Every light in the hangar flickered as a massive electrical surge pulsed through the ship's hull. The breathing pattern suddenly accelerated, and the warm spots on the vessel began glowing brighter. But most shocking of all, words began forming in Elena's mind, not heard through her ears, but somehow transmitted directly into her thoughts. Who disturbs our rest? Elena stumbled backward, her hand flying to her head. Around the hangar, she could see other team members having the same reaction. They were all hearing the voice, but it wasn't coming through any speaker or communication device. It was inside their heads. Did everyone else just ... Kevin started to say, but he couldn't finish the sentence. "We all heard it," Colonel Hayes said grimly. "The question is, what do we do now?" Elena forced herself to step closer to the ship. Her scientific curiosity was stronger than her fear. "We respond," she said. "If it can communicate, we need to find out what it wants." She activated the communication array again, this time speaking aloud while the system transmitted her words as electrical and chemical signals. "We are researchers. We found you at the bottom of the ocean. We mean no harm." The response came. Faster this time, and with it, Elena felt a wave of emotions that weren't her own: sadness, longing, and a deep, ancient weariness. "Ocean ... Yes, we have slept in the deep places for so long. You are the surface dwellers? The small ones who sail above. What are you?" Elena asked, her voice shaking slightly. There was a long pause, and then the voice returned, carrying with it images that flashed through Elena's mind. She saw a sailing ship from centuries past, flying the British flag. She saw men in naval uniforms working on the deck. And then she saw something terrible happening to them. "We were the HMS Leviathan. We sailed in the year your people call 1823. We were sent to explore the far waters, to map the unknown places. But we found something that should have remained hidden." Kevin was frantically taking notes, trying to record everything they were experiencing. "What did you find?" he asked. The ship's breathing pattern changed, becoming more agitated. The lights in the hangar dimmed as if the vessel was drawing power from the electrical systems. "Ancient things, old beyond your understanding. They dwelt in the deepest trenches where no light has ever shone. We thought we were explorers, but we were merely prey." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "What happened to your crew?" "We fought. Captain William Ashford, brave to the end. Bosun Thompson with his steady hands. Navigator Collins, who could read the stars like scripture. We all fought against the things that rose from the depths. But fighting was not enough." The images in Elena's mind became more vivid and disturbing. She saw tentacles the size of buildings emerging from oceanic trenches. She saw the ship being pulled down into darkness. And then she saw something that made her gasp. The crew members didn't die in the attack. Instead, they began to change. The Ancient Ones showed us a different path. Not death, but transformation. They merged us with our ship, made us part of it, and it part of us. We became 1 - 347 souls, sharing one body, one purpose. Colonel Hayes stepped forward. Are you saying the crew is still alive? After 200 years? Alive, but not as you understand life. We are the ship, and the ship is us. Thompson still mans. Our guns, though, now he is the guns. Collins still navigates, though now he is our compass and sail. We endure because we must. Elena's mind was reeling with the implications. Why must you endure? What's your purpose? The ship's hull suddenly grew warmer, and she could feel something like urgency in the mental connection. Because they are waking. Up, the ancient ones who changed us. They sleep in the deep places for centuries at a time, but their slumber is ending. We were meant to be their servants, their weapons against the surface world, but we remember who we were. We remember our duty to protect, not destroy. Protect from what? Elena asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. From the others like us. Ships that were changed but did not resist. Vessels whose crews forgot their humanity and embraced the transformation completely. They wait in the depths, ready to serve their masters when the call comes. Kevin looked up from his notes, his face pale. How many others? Dozens. Ships from every nation that dared explore the deep waters. Russian vessels, French frigates, American whalers, Spanish galleons, all transformed, all waiting. But unlike us, they do not fight their new nature. Elena felt the weight of what they were learning. This wasn't just about one impossible ship. It was about an entire fleet of transformed vessels lurking in the ocean depths, waiting for some ancient signal to begin a war against the surface world. What can we do? She asked. The ship's breathing slowed, and she could sense Captain Ashford's consciousness becoming clearer, more focused. You must prepare. The ancient ones will rise soon. We can feel their stirring in the deep currents. When they do, their servants will answer the call. Ships that have forgotten they were ever human will attack your coastal cities, your ports, your people, but you won't join them? We are still the crew of the HMS Leviathan. We still serve the Crown, though the Crown has changed much since our time. We will fight beside you, if you will have us. But know this, the enemy you face cannot be defeated by normal weapons. They are like us now, part machine and part living creature. They adapt, they heal, they learn. Elena looked around the hangar, at her team. Every face showed the same mixture of fear and determination. They had made first contact with something that challenged every assumption about life and death, about what was possible in their world. And now they were being asked to help prepare for a war against an enemy that shouldn't exist. We'll help, she said finally. But we need to understand more about how you work, how the transformation happened. We need to know everything if we're going to stand a chance. The voice in her mind carried what felt like gratitude. We will teach you what we can. But remember, knowledge comes with a price. To truly understand us, you must be willing to see the world as we see it. And once you do, you can never go back to the simple certainty of your old life. As the communication ended and the ship's hull cooled, Elena realized that their discovery had just become something much bigger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. They weren't just studying an impossible vessel, they were preparing for an impossible war. 2 days after the first communication, Dr. Elena Rodriguez hadn't slept more than a few hours. She couldn't stop thinking about what Captain Ashford had told them. The idea that an entire crew could exist inside a living ship was beyond anything science had ever encountered. But if they were going to understand how to fight the coming threat, she needed to know exactly how the transformation worked. We need to go deeper, she told her team during their morning briefing. If 347 crew members really exist inside that ship, we need to find a way to speak with them individually. Lieutenant Blake Williams, their communications specialist, looked skeptical. How do we even know they're still individuals? Maybe it's just one collective consciousness pretending to be many people. Elena had wondered the same thing, but her instincts told her otherwise. During their first contact, she had sensed different personalities in the voice that spoke to them. Sometimes it felt like the stern authority of a ship's captain. Other times, it carried the warmth of someone who had spent years caring for his fellow sailors. "There's only one way to find out," she said. "We build a better interface." Working. Around the clock, Elena's team constructed what they called the neural bridge, a sophisticated device that could translate human brain patterns into the bioelectrical language the ship understood. It looked like a helmet covered in sensors and wires connected to a computer system that would hopefully allow direct mental contact with individual crew members. Kevin Park volunteered to be the first test subject. As Elena's most trusted assistant, he understood the risks better than anyone. They had no idea what direct mental contact with a transformed human consciousness might do to a normal person's mind. "Remember," Elena told him as she helped him put on the helmet, "if you feel anything dangerous, anything that doesn't feel right, you pull out immediately. We'll cut the connection from our end." Kevin nodded nervously. "What should I ask them?" "Start. Simple. Try to make contact with just one crew member. Ask about their life before the transformation." Elena activated the neural bridge, and immediately Kevin's vital signs spiked. His eyes rolled back, and for a moment she was afraid they had made a terrible mistake. But then he began to speak, though his voice sounded different, older, with a slight accent. "My name is Robert Thompson. I was bosun's mate aboard the HMS Leviathan. I remember everything." Elena felt her heart racing. "Kevin, is that you?" Kevin's head turned toward her, but his expression was completely unfamiliar. "Kevin? No, miss, though I can sense him here with me. A good lad, reminds me of my youngest brother back in Portsmouth." "Mr. Thompson," Elena said carefully, "can you tell me what happened to you?" The man who was Kevin, but wasn't Kevin, closed his eyes. "It was the most terrible and wonderful thing you could imagine. We were dying, you see. The creatures from the deep had torn our ship apart. The water was rushing in, and we all knew we had but minutes to live." Elena watched the monitors as Kevin's brain patterns shifted in ways she had never seen before. It was as if two different minds were sharing the same space. Then Captain Ashford made the choice. "The creatures, they offered us something. Not death, but transformation. We could become part of the ship, and the ship could become part of us. We would live forever, but we would never again walk on dry land or feel the sun on our faces." "What was it like?" Elena asked. "The transformation itself?" Kevin's body shuddered. "Like drowning and being born at the same time. I felt my body dissolving, but my mind remained clear. I could sense my mates around me, all of us becoming something new together. And then I understood I wasn't just Robert Thompson anymore. I was the ship's defensive systems. I was her guns and her armor. Every enemy that threatened us, I could feel them coming long before they appeared." Elena made frantic notes. "You can control the ship's weapons?" "Control? No, miss, I am the weapons. When danger comes, I don't think about firing their guns. I simply fire them, the same way you might raise your hand or blink your eyes. The ship's cannons are my arms now." "Kevin," Elena called out, "are you still there?" Kevin's expression shifted slightly, and his voice returned to normal. "I'm here. It's incredible, Elena. I can feel what he feels. The ship isn't just a vessel. It's like a body, and each crew member is a different part of it." "Thompson, really? Is the defensive systems? I can sense other crew members too. Can you reach someone else?" Kevin concentrated, and again his expression changed. This time his voice carried the careful precision of an educated man. "I am Navigator James Collins. I have the honor of serving as the ship's eyes and compass. Through me, Captain Ashford can see across vast distances and navigate waters no chart has ever mapped." Elena leaned forward. "What can you see now, Mr. Collins?" "I see your research facility as clearly as if I stood upon its roof. I see the ships in your harbor, the aircraft overhead. But more than that, I can see disturbances in the ocean currents hundreds of miles away. The ancient ones are stirring, miss. Their servants grow restless. How much time do we have?" Collins, through Kevin, was quiet for a long moment. "Weeks. Perhaps less. They communicate through vibrations in the deep water, sounds too low for human ears to detect. But I can hear them clearly now. The gathering has begun. Elena felt a chill. What gathering? The transformed ships. They are receiving their orders, moving toward rally points in the deepest parts of every ocean. Soon they will rise together and begin their assault on the surface world. Kevin suddenly jerked, and his voice became urgent. Elena, I need to disconnect. There's someone else trying to make contact, and he feels different. But before Elena could cut the connection, Kevin's expression hardened into something cold and hostile. When he spoke, his voice carried an authority that made everyone in the room step back. I am Captain William Ashford of Her Majesty's Royal Navy. You will address me as Sir. Elena swallowed hard. Sir, we're honored to speak with you. Honor has nothing to do with this, Ashford replied curtly. You have awakened something that was better left sleeping. My crew and I have spent 2 centuries learning to control our new nature, to remember our humanity despite what we have become. But now, because of your discovery, we will be forced into a war we hope to avoid. We didn't know, Elena protested. We were just trying to understand. Understanding comes with consequences, Doctor. The moment you raised my ship from the depths, you sent ripples through the deep currents. Every transformed vessel in the ocean now knows we have been found. They know the surface world is aware of our existence. Kevin's vital signs were becoming erratic. Elena could see the strain of channeling multiple personalities was taking its toll. Captain, she said, we want to help. Tell us what we need to do. Ashford's expression softened slightly. You cannot help, not as you are? The enemy we face requires weapons that can adapt and evolve in real time. It requires warriors who can think and fight as one unified force. It requires. He paused, as if struggling with what he was about to say. It requires transformation. Elena finished. Yes, some of your people will need to join us, to become part of living ships as we have. It is the only way to match the enemy's capabilities. But I warn you, the process cannot be undone. Those who choose this path will gain incredible power, but they will lose their individual human existence forever. Elena looked around the room at her team. The weight of what they were being asked to consider was enormous. Transform volunteers into human ship hybrids to fight an enemy that shouldn't exist. How many would we need? She asked quietly. Enough to crew several vessels? The old warships in your naval museums, the decommissioned submarines, they could all be transformed and brought to life. But each would require dozens of volunteers willing to sacrifice their humanity for the greater good. Kevin suddenly gasped and pulled off the helmet. He was himself again, but his hands were shaking and his face was pale with exhaustion. Elena, he whispered. I could feel them all. Hundreds of crew members, each one different but all connected. They're not just surviving in there, they're thriving, but the cost is everything that makes us individually human. Elena helped Kevin to a chair and looked back at the massive ship in the hangar. Inside that living hull were nearly 350 souls who had made the ultimate sacrifice to protect their world. Now they were asking modern humans to make the same choice. The question was, would anyone be brave enough to volunteer? And more importantly, would Elena herself be willing to give up her humanity to gain the power needed to save it? As if sensing her thoughts, the ship's hull pulsed with a warm, golden light. Captain Ashford's voice echoed in her mind one last time. The choice will be yours, Doctor, but choose quickly. The enemy rises and time is running out. The alarm started blaring at 3:47 a.m. Dr. Elena Rodriguez jolted awake in her quarters and grabbed her emergency radio. The voice of Dr. Patricia Chun, who was monitoring the deep ocean sensors, crackled through with barely controlled panic. Elena, you need to get to the control room now. They're moving. All of them. Elena threw on her clothes and ran through the corridors of the research facility. When she burst into the control room, she found her entire team gathered around massive screens showing ocean monitoring data from around the world. What she saw made her blood run cold. Dozens of massive objects were rising from oceanic trenches. Across the globe, the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian Ocean, everywhere their sensors could reach, Things that had been sleeping in the deepest parts of the ocean for decades were suddenly coming to life. How many? Elena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Kevin Park, who still looked exhausted from his experience with the neural bridge, pointed at the screens. At least 40 that we can detect. But our sensors only cover about 60% of the ocean. There could be twice that many. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes was on 3 different phones at once, coordinating with military bases around the world. Elena caught fragments of his conversations. Pearl Harbor reports massive sonar contacts. The British Navy tracking unknown vessels in the Atlantic. Something the size of an aircraft carrier just emerged from the Mariana Trench. Elena rushed over to the HMS Leviathan's communication array. If Captain Ashford and his crew could sense these movements, they needed to know what they were facing. Captain Ashford, she called out through the bioelectrical interface. We're detecting massive movement in ocean trenches worldwide. Are these the enemy ships you warned us about? The response came immediately, filled with grim certainty. Yes, Doctor, the call has gone out. Our former masters have awakened from their deep slumber, and their servants answer. What you are seeing is only the beginning. Through the neural bridge, Elena felt Captain Ashford sharing his enhanced senses with her. Suddenly, she could perceive the ocean in ways no human ever had before. She could feel the vibrations in the water, the deep currents carrying messages between the awakening vessels. And underneath it all, she sensed something vast and ancient stirring in the deepest trenches. What are they exactly? Elena asked. These ancient ones who transformed your ships? They are older than your species, older than most life on land. They ruled the deep places when your continents were still forming. We called them the Abyssal Lords, beings of such immense power and intelligence that they shaped the very ocean floor to their will. Elena watched the monitoring screens as more contacts appeared. Why are they doing this? What do they want? The answer came with images that flashed through her mind, visions of the Earth millions of years ago, when the oceans were deeper and the land masses were smaller. She saw creatures of impossible size moving through underwater cities that stretched for hundreds of miles. They want their world back, Ashford explained. For millions of years, they ruled a planet that was mostly ocean. But as the land grew and your species spread across the surface, the balance shifted. They see humanity as an infection that must be cleansed before it destroys what they consider their rightful domain. Kevin had been monitoring radio communications. From around the globe? Elena, we're getting reports from coastal cities. Ships are appearing just outside territorial waters, but they're not like anything in any navy. The descriptions are ... strange. Elena looked at the communications equipment. Patch me through to the Pacific Fleet. I need to hear these reports directly. The voice of Admiral Rebecca Stone came through the speakers, tense and professional despite the impossible situation she was reporting. Dr. Rodriguez, this is Admiral Stone aboard the USS Columbia. We have visual contact with 3 unidentified vessels approximately 50 miles west of San Francisco. They appear to be warships from the 18th or 19th century, but they're moving, without any visible means of propulsion. No sails, no steam, nothing we can identify. What's their behavior, Admiral? They're just ... waiting, maintaining position in international waters. But our sonar is picking up something else. There are sounds coming from their hulls, like whale songs, but deeper. It's almost like they're communicating with something. Elena felt Captain Ashford's consciousness stir in her mind. May I speak? With your Admiral, Doctor? Elena activated the external speakers. Admiral Stone, I'm going to put you in communication with Captain William Ashford of the HMS Leviathan. He can explain what you're seeing. There was a pause before Admiral Stone responded. Doctor, are you saying you have a British naval officer on your team? Our records don't show any HMS Leviathan in current service. The situation is complicated. Admiral, Captain Ashford has been out of commission for about 200 years, but he understands these ships better than anyone. Elena switched the connection to allow Captain Ashford to speak directly through their communication system. When his voice came through the speakers, it carried the unmistakable authority of a seasoned naval commander. Admiral Stone, I serve. Under similar circumstances to what you now face. The vessels you observe are crewed by men who were once like you and your sailors. But they have been changed, transformed into something that serves the ancient powers of the deep ocean. Transformed how? Admiral Stone asked. Their humanity has been stripped away, replaced with absolute loyalty to creatures that view your world as an enemy to be destroyed. Unlike my crew, they embraced the change willingly. They no longer remember their families, their countries, or their oaths to protect human life. Elena watched the monitoring screens as more ships appeared around the globe. Each one was a masterpiece of naval architecture from a bygone era, but moving with purpose and intelligence that no traditional sailing ship could possess. Captain, Admiral Stone's voice was grim, what are their capabilities? They cannot be sunk by conventional weapons, Admiral. Their hulls will heal from any damage you inflict. Their crews do not tire, do not fear, and do not retreat. They can see through fog and darkness, navigate by senses you do not possess, and coordinate their attacks across vast distances without any communication equipment you would recognize. Kevin looked up from his monitoring station. Elena, we're getting reports from the deep ocean sensors. Something big is rising from the deepest parts of the Pacific Trench. The readings are ... massive. Whatever it is, it's at least 10 times larger than any ship we've detected. Elena felt a chill of fear run through her connection with Captain Ashford. For the first time since they had made contact, she sensed genuine terror from the transformed captain. The Harbinger, he whispered. They've awakened the Harbinger. What's the Harbinger? Elena asked. The first of the Abyssal Lord's creations. A ship the size of a floating city, crewed by the merged consciousness of 1,000 sailors from a dozen navies. It serves as their flagship, their coordinator. When the Harbinger rises, it means the war has truly begun. On the monitoring screens, Elena watched as a contact the size of Manhattan slowly rose from the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean as it reached shallower water. Their sensors began picking up details that defied belief. The vessel was shaped like a traditional ship of the line, but stretched to impossible proportions. Along its sides, hundreds of gun ports glowed with an eerie blue light. Admiral Stone, Elena called out, you need to evacuate the coastal cities immediately. Whatever's about to happen, it's going to be bigger than anyone imagined. Evacuation is already underway, the Admiral replied. But Doctor, we need options. What can we do against an enemy like this? Elena looked around the control room at her team. They had known this moment would come, but knowing and experiencing it were very different things. The choice Captain Ashford had presented was no longer theoretical. They needed transformed vessels of their own, which meant they needed volunteers willing to give up their humanity. Admiral, Elena said slowly, we may have a solution. But it's going to require some very brave people to make some very difficult choices. Through her connection with Captain Ashford, she could feel his approval. The time for preparation is over, Doctor. Now we must ask your people to make the same sacrifice my crew made 2 centuries ago. The question is, will they be willing to become something more than human in order to save humanity itself? Elena looked out at the research facilities harbor, where several decommissioned naval vessels sat waiting. Old destroyers, a World War II submarine, even a museum piece frigate from the 1800s. Each one could potentially be brought to life through the transformation process. Each one would require dozens of volunteers willing to merge their consciousness. With living metal, we'll need to move fast, she said. How long do we have before they attack? Captain Ashford's response carried the weight of centuries of military experience. The Harbinger will need time to coordinate the fleet and receive final orders from the Abyssal Lords. Perhaps 72 hours, no more. Elena took a deep breath. In 3 days, they would need to accomplish something that had taken the ancient powers months to achieve with Captain Ashford's crew. They would need to transform volunteers into living ships and prepare them for a war against an enemy that had been planning this assault for decades. 68 hours remained before the ancient fleet would launch their attack. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the facility's main briefing room, facing 43 volunteers from around the world. Navy sailors, marine biologists, engineers, and even a few civilians who had somehow learned about the crisis and demanded to help. Each person in that room understood what they were volunteering for, to give up their individual human existence and become part of a living warship. "I won't lie to you," Elena said, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was asking. "The transformation process is irreversible. Once you merge with a ship's systems, you'll never again exist as a separate person. You'll be part of something larger, something powerful, but you'll lose what makes you individually human." Lieutenant Commander Alex Rivera, a submarine captain with 15 years of service, raised his hand. "Dr. Rodriguez, what exactly will we become? Will we still be us, or will we be something else entirely?" Elena looked toward the communication array where Captain Ashford could hear every word. "Captain, would you explain it to them?" Ashford's voice filled the room through the speakers. "You will remain yourselves, but you will also become more. Imagine sharing thoughts with your closest friends, feeling their emotions as your own, working together so closely that you anticipate each other's actions before they happen. Now imagine that feeling extended to an entire crew, all working as one mind with one purpose." A young marine engineer named David Kim spoke up. "Will we remember our families, our lives before?" "Every memory will remain," Ashford replied. "But they will feel distant, like recollections from another life. Your new family will be your crewmates. Your new life will be the ship itself. It is both a gift and a burden beyond anything you can imagine." Elena watched the faces of the volunteers. Some looked afraid, others determined. A few seemed almost eager to experience something no human had ever survived before. She understood their feelings. Part of her wanted to volunteer herself, to experience consciousness on a level that transcended individual existence. Kevin Park had been working around the clock to modify the transformation process, using data. From the HMS Leviathan, he had developed a way to accelerate what had taken the ancient powers months to accomplish. The process would still take hours, but they could potentially transform multiple ships simultaneously. "We have 5 vessels ready for transformation," Elena announced. The USS Intrepid, a World War II destroyer. The MS Victory replica that was being used as a training ship. The Russian submarine Kursk II, the French frigate Lafayette, and the Chinese destroyer Kunming. Each ship will require between 8 and 12 crew members to achieve full integration. Admiral Stone's voice crackled through the radio from the Pacific Fleet. "Dr. Rodriguez, we're tracking the enemy fleet. They're moving into attack positions around major coastal cities worldwide. San Francisco, New York, London, Tokyo, Sydney. They're preparing for a coordinated global assault." Elena felt the pressure of time running out. "We need to begin the transformation process immediately. Volunteers, please divide yourselves among the 5 ships based on your expertise and preferences. Remember, once you choose a vessel, you'll be bonded to it permanently." The volunteers began moving toward the harbor where the ships were moored. Elena watched them go, feeling a mixture of pride and sorrow. These people were making the ultimate sacrifice for their species, and most of the world would never know their names or understand what they had given up. Kevin approached her with a concerned expression. "Elena, there's something we need to discuss. The transformation chambers are ready, but we've only tested the process using data from Captain Ashford's crew. We don't know if modern humans will react the same way people did 200 years ago." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying there's a chance this won't work. Or worse, it might work partially, leaving the volunteers trapped between human and ship consciousness without the ability to function as either." Elena felt her stomach drop. They were asking people to risk not just their humanity, but their sanity and possibly their lives, based on theories and hope. "Do we have any other choice?" she asked. Kevin shook his head. "None that would give us any chance against the enemy fleet." Elena made her decision. "We proceed. But I'm going to be part of the first transformation group." "Elena, no. We need you here to coordinate. We need someone with experience in biomechanical systems to help guide the process from the inside. Besides, if I'm asking others to make this sacrifice, I should be willing to make it myself." 2 hours later, Elena found herself standing on the deck of the USS Intrepid alongside 11 other volunteers. The ship had been extensively modified over the past 3 days with biomechanical interfaces installed throughout its structure. Tubes filled with a glowing organic fluid ran along the walls, and the metal itself seemed to pulse with a faint heartbeat. "Captain," Ashford's voice reached them through speakers placed around the ship. "The process will begin shortly. You will feel your individual consciousness expanding, reaching out to touch the minds of your crewmates and the ship itself. Do not fight it. Embrace the connection and let yourselves become part of something greater." Elena lay down in one of the transformation chambers, a pod-like structure filled with the same organic fluid that now flowed through the ship's veins. As the pod closed around her, she felt a warm, tingling sensation spreading through her body. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, gradually, she became aware of other minds nearby. David Kim, the marine engineer, was in the chamber next to hers. She could feel his excitement and terror mixing together. Lieutenant Rodriguez was experiencing the ship's engine systems awakening to his touch. Chief Petty Officer Walsh was slowly merging with the navigation computers. The sensation was indescribable. Elena felt her consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of her physical body. She could sense every system on the ship, every piece of equipment, every structural component. And through it all, she felt the presence of her crewmates, their minds blending with hers in ways that created something entirely new. Hours passed, or perhaps days. Time had no meaning in the transformation process. When Elena finally emerged from the chamber, she was no longer just Dr. Elena Rodriguez. She was the USS Intrepid's medical and biological systems. She could feel the health and status of every crew member, could diagnose problems and coordinate repairs at the speed of thought. "Status report," she said, though the words came from speakers throughout the ship rather than her individual voice. "Transformation complete," replied the collective consciousness that had once been 11 separate people. "All systems integrated. We are ready for combat." Through the ship's enhanced senses, Elena could perceive the enemy fleet approaching the coastline. Dozens of transformed vessels, each one crewed by beings who had forgotten their humanity completely. At their head sailed the massive Harbinger, its 1,000-strong crew operating as a single, terrifyingly efficient intelligence. "This is Admiral Stone to all transformed vessels," came the radio communication. "Enemy fleet is beginning their attack on coastal cities. You are authorized to engage." The 5 newly transformed ships moved out of the harbor in perfect coordination. Elena could feel her sister ships nearby, the HMS Victory with its crew of British naval historians who had volunteered to defend their heritage, the Kursk II carrying Russian submarine specialists who understood underwater warfare better than anyone. The first engagement came 20 miles from shore. 3 enemy ships, their hulls black with age and their crews long since lost to the transformation, moved to intercept them. Elena felt the USS Intrepid's weapon systems come online, not the old guns the ship had once carried, but new biomechanical cannons that could adapt their ammunition in real time. The battle was unlike anything in naval history. Ships that could think and react faster than any human crew, weapons that learned from each shot fired, hulls that could heal damage even as it was inflicted. Elena found herself coordinating medical responses for crew members who existed as much as living tissue as human consciousness, while simultaneously analyzing enemy attack patterns and developing countermeasures. But the enemy had numbers and experience. For every transformed ship Elena's side fielded, the ancient fleet had 5. The battle raged for hours, and slowly, inevitably, the human ships were being overwhelmed. That's when Captain Ashford made his final sacrifice. The MS Leviathan, carrying 2 centuries of experience and the unbreakable will of its crew, sailed directly into the path of the Harbinger. Elena watched through her enhanced senses as the smaller ship engaged the massive flagship in single combat. "For Queen and country," Captain Ashford's voice echoed across all frequencies. And for the future of humanity. The explosion when the Leviathan rammed the Harbinger lit up the ocean for miles. Both ships disappeared in a brilliant flash of bioelectrical energy that somehow disrupted the coordination between all the enemy vessels. In that moment of confusion, Elena and the other transformed ships struck. Working together with a precision that only shared consciousness could achieve, they systematically disabled the enemy fleet. Ships that had terrorized the oceans for decades found themselves outmatched by vessels crewed by humans who remembered what they were fighting for.